Hello, welcome to Mr. Rollin Storytime. Today's story is about an adventure between a princess and a polar bear. It's called The Princess and the White Bear King. Let's begin. In the north, where the thickly needled pine forests are deep and dark and the snow falls bride white, there once lived 3 princesses, daughters of a king and queen. All 3 were beautiful, but with their long fair hair and her dreamy eyes, the youngest was the fairest by far, and her father loved her the best. One night the youngest princess dreamt of a golden crown, and the gold of the crown was brighter than the sun itself. When she awoke, there was nothing she wanted more than to go back to sleep and keep company with her dream. When the king heard about his daughter's dream, he ordered all the smiths and craftsmen to forge fine crowns. But some crowns were too big and others too small. Some were too intricate, that means detailed, and others were too plain. None of the crowns made at her father's command were as fine as the one the princess had dreamt about. There she is dreaming. One day, as she was walking in the forest, the princess came across a great bear with a shaggy, snow-white pelt and huge paddle paws. He tossed into the air a crown of gold, the crown of the princess's dream. "Bear, give me that crown," the princess cried. "This crown is not for sale, not for gold or for money," he growled. "But I will give it to you in exchange for yourself." The princess agreed at once, and the bear promised to fetch her in the week's time. But when the bear came, the king barred the castle gate and set soldiers to guard it. The bear splintered the gate and knocked all the soldiers to the ground, and so the king sent out his eldest daughter. The princess climbed atop the bear's great shaggy back. They rode and they rode over the bride white snow and through the thickly needled forest. When the bear called, "Are you afraid?" "Yes," cried the girl. And the bear shook her from his back. "Then you are not the one," he muttered, and returned to the king's castle. Now the king sent out his second daughter. She too rode into the forest until the bear growled, "Are you afraid?" The girl trembled as she answered, "Yes." She too was thrown from the back to the ground. When the bear returned for the third time, the youngest princess ran out to greet him. She clambered onto his back and buried her face into the thick white pelt. They rode like the wind through a day and through night, over great frozen lakes and through dark forests, until the bear called out, "Are you afraid?" "No," whispered the princess. "Then you are the one," purred the bear. They rode and they rode until they came to a magnificent castle. Magnificent. It means beautiful beyond compare. With white stone turrets and windows like eyes blinking in all directions, treasures, trophies and lavish tapestries decked the walls, and each magnificent room led into another. On a glass table in the centre of one such room sat a small golden bell. "You are free to use the castle as you please," the bear said in a low rumble. "If there is anything you wish from me, all you need to do is ring the bell." And with that he stroked her cheek in his paw and lumbered away. The princess explored the castle until she grew heavy with sleep. When she rang upon the small gold bell, she found herself lying in a great soft bed covered with soft pink quilt. Her eyes had hardly closed when she was stirred by a gentle padding of paws. She heard the sound of something soft but heavy falling to the floor, but she was too tired to worry about it. Soon she was fast asleep, and so time passed. Every day the princess found more to delight her in the castle grounds, and every night she heard the gentle padding of paws as she drifted into sleep. Months 8 days, and days 8 hours, and with only the bear for company, generous though he was, she grew more and more lonely. until one morning she felt so very homesick that she asked the bear to take her back to her family. Not forever, but for just a week. "This can be done," answered the bear, "but you must make me a promise. Do not listen to the advice of your mother, for if you do, bad luck will befall us both." The princess promised she would do as asked, and the bear carried her back through the thickly needled forest to her father's castle. Her family greeted her with such joy it was as if 100 summers had come all at once. For 6 days the princess remembered the bear's advice, and she took care to stay with her sisters, so that her mother would not question her too closely. But on the 7th day, the queen took her to one side and asked her how she had spent her time, and the princess told her about the magnificent castle and about the strange sound she heard each night in the room as she fell asleep. "It is some sort of evil enchantment," whispered the queen. "Maybe the bear is really a troll." Then she pressed a candle and a knife into her daughter's hand. "The next time you hear a sound, have this knife close and light this candle so that you can see who it is." The queen's words lay heavy with the princess, for she was trusted the bear, but now doubt poisoned her mind. So when the bear came to fetch her and carry her back to the castle, she carried hidden the candle and the knife. When the bear asked her if she had listened to her mother's advice, she lied and said no. That night the princess heard the tread of the soft paddle paws and sound of something soft and heavy falling to the ground. She lit the candle to see who was there. To her astonishment, it was no troll, but a young man so beautiful that she trembled with shame. And as she did so, she spilled hot wax from the candle on her shirt. The beautiful man stared at the princess with such sadness in his eyes that he could not return her gaze. "What have you done?" he cried. "Now, the ill luck that you have brought upon us both. Have you but waited until a year had passed, the enchantment would put upon us by the troll queen would have been broken, and I would have become the prince that I was born to be, and your own true love. But now I must leave and travel to a land east of the sun and west of the moon and marry the troll queen. And you and I shall never again be together, for there is nothing I can do now to break the enchantment." And with that, he wrapped the great white pelt around him and fell back on all fours as the bear. The princess threw herself upon his back and cried that he might take her with him, but the bear was deaf to her cries. He ran out into the night and through the forest. He would not stop. The princess clung to his fur until she was so scratched and so numb with cold that she fell exhausted into the forest floor. When she awoke, she was all alone, with the forest and snow stretching in all directions. So she stood up and walked through the great snowdrift. She walked and she walked until she thought she could walk no further. Then, one evening, she saw at last the lights of a lonely cottage. The princess knocked politely on the door and was invited in by an old woman. "Pardon me, mother," said the princess, "but have you seen a great white bear heading for a far land that lies east of the sun and west of the moon?" "I think he might have passed this way." The old woman nodded. "Here he came, and now he's gone. That way he went, but you'll never catch him." She pointed towards the thick of the forest. "Then I go, late or never," the princess sighed, and she turned to leave. The old woman called out, "If you travel to the land that lies east of the sun and west of the moon, you had better take this with you." And she handed the princess a tablecloth. The princess thanked her and tucked it into the folds of her skirt. She walked and she walked for a year and a day, until she came upon a second cottage. There sat an old woman, carding wood. "Pardon me, mother," said the princess, "but have you seen a great white bear heading for a land that lies east of the sun and west of the moon? I think he might have passed this way." The old woman nodded. "Here he came, and now he's gone. That way he went, but you'll never catch him." "Then I go, late or never," the princess sighed. She turned to leave. The old woman called out, "If you're travelling to the land that lies east of the sun and west of the moon, then you'd better take this with you." And she handed the princess a pair of silver scissors. The princess thanked her and tucked the gift into the folds of her skirt. On she walked through a year and a day, until one evening she spied a third cottage with a wisp of smoke rising up through the trees. There she came across an old woman drawing water from a well. "Pardon me, mother," said the princess, "but have you seen a great white bear heading for a land that lies east of the sun and west of the moon? I think he may have passed this way." The old woman nodded. He came, and now he's gone. That way he went, but you'll never catch him." The old woman pointed into the thick of the forest. "Then I go, late or never." The princess sighed, and she turned to leave. The old woman called out, "If you are travelling to the land that lies east of the sun and west of the moon, then you'd better take this." And she handed the princess a golden cup. The princess thanked her and tucked her cup into the folds of her skirt. On and on the princess walked until she heard the sounds of children weeping and crying. There in a clearing she came across a tumbleweed cottage nestled at the base of a huge glass mountain. Outside the cottage stood a woman in rags and tatters, filling a cooking pot with stones. "Pardon me, mother," said the princess, "but have you seen a great white bear heading for a land that lies east of the sun and west of the moon? I think he may have passed this way." "The white bear? Yes, he passed this way, and the place you seek lies above, upon the mountain of glass. But you'll never catch him, for only the birds can go there. The slopes are too steep for the likes of us to climb." Hearing this, the princess sat down on the base of the glass mountain, and she would have wept had it not been for the cries of the hungry children that now crowded with the stone-filled pot. I wonder what she's going to do. "Why is it," said the princess, "that you feed your children stones?" "It is all I have," the woman sighed. "My husband is a blacksmith, and he's off working, and we've eaten the cupboards bare." Then a feeling of great compassion filled the princess, and she drew her gifts from her skirt. She spread the tablecloth, and great feast appeared before them. She passed the cup from child to child, and each drank its fill of milk. Then she set down to clip the scissors this way and that until all the children were warmly dressed in brightly coloured clothes. The woman thanked the princess kindly and promised her a favour in return. And so it was that when the blacksmith returned, he forged great iron claws for the princess's hands and her feet. The very next day, the princess began to climb the great mountain of glass, daring neither to look up nor look down. Higher and higher she climbed, and the air grew cold and the sky dark. Her arms and legs ached, and her hands were torn and bloody. And when she thought she could climb no further, she came to a land where the sky was thick and the clouds dark. And the land is all bare brown hills, creased by a winding road. Following the road, the princess came at last to a great grey castle. This was the home of the Troll Queen. The princess sat outside the castle walls and reached into the folds of her skirt. She pulled out the tablecloth and flicked it one way and then another, so that a great feast spread itself all about her. The smell of the food brought the Troll Queen to the window, and spying the magic cloth, she called, "Oh, my cooks sweat day and night. We will never have food enough for the wedding feast. What will you give for your fine toy?" And the princess replied, "This is not for sale for gold or for money, but I will give it to you in return for a night with your prince, the bridegroom." The Troll Queen agreed, but she was a cunning creature, and that night she slipped a sleeping draught into the prince's wine. When the princess was led to the bedchamber, the prince lay thick, dreamless, and in slumber. Then the princess wept and cried, 3 long years, 3 long years I've searched for you. My gift of cloth I've sold for you. A mountain of glass I've climbed for you. Will you not wake and turn to me? But the prince did not wake, and in the morning the guards tossed her out through the castle gates. Again the princess sat outside the walls of the castle and reached into the folds of her skirt. Pulling out the silver scissors, snip, 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 she cut through the air, and brightly coloured clothes fell about her feet. The flash and click of the silver brought the troll queen to her window, and the spying of the silver scissors she called, "Though my tailors toil day and night, we will never clothe the wedding party in time. What will you give for your precious toy?" And the princess replied, "It is not for sale for gold or money, but I will give it to you in return for another night with your prince, the bridegroom." The troll queen agreed, but again she slipped a sleeping draught into the prince's wine. So when the prince was led to the bridegroom's chamber, he could not be woken from his slumber. Then the princess wept and cried, "3 long years I've searched for you. My gift of silver I've sold for you. A mountain of glass I climbed for you. But you will not wake and turn to me." And in the morning the guards tossed her out through the castle gates. There she is outside the gates. So, for a third time, the princess sat outside the castle walls and drew from the folds of her skirt the last of her gifts, the golden cup. She tossed it this way and that, causing the wine and ale to flow. The sweet smell of the wine brought the troll queen to her window, and spying the golden cup she called, "Though my brewers work day and night, we will never have a drink enough for the wedding feast. What will you take for your fine toy?" And the princess replied, "It is not for sale for gold nor money, but I will give it to you in return for a last night with your prince, the bridegroom." The troll queen agreed and prepared a sleeping draught. But a kindly servant of the prince, who for the last 2 nights had heard the princess's cries, told his master of the young woman's weeping. So when the troll queen gave the prince his wine, he just pretended to drink it, and then lay still as if he'd fallen into a deep sleep. But the troll queen grew suspicious. She checked that the sleeping draught had worked. She gave the prince a long, hard pinch in the arm, but even though the pain was terrible, the prince did not flinch. That night, when the princess knelt by his bed, she wept. 3 long years I've searched for you. My gift of gold I've sold for you. A mountain of glass I've climbed for you. Will you not wake and turn to me?" And when her hot tears fell upon his face, the prince opened his eyes, and they embraced, and their embrace was so sweet and long and true. "Listen, my love," whispered the prince. "Tomorrow I am promised to marry the troll queen if she can first wash the wax stains from my wedding shirt. Hide yourself among the wedding guests, for only my true bride will be able to wash the shirt clean." The next morning the wedding party assembled by the river, and the princess stood quietly among them. The prince held his stained shirt out to the troll queen, calling that only his true bride would be able to wash the shirt clean. Snorting with impatience, the troll queen stepped forward and snatched the stained shirt, plunging it into the water, but the more she rubbed, the larger and darker the stain got. And she scowled and spat with anger and threw the shirt to the ground. Then the princess stepped forward from the crowd and dipped the shirt in the river, and instantly it was clean and bright white. And as the princess held the shirt high for all to see, the sun burst through the dark clouds, turning the troll queen and all of her followers into cold, grey stone. The princess and the prince flew from the land that lay east of the sun and west of the moon, taking with them many treasures. And when they returned to the prince's castle, they called for the princess's family, and a wedding feast to be held that lasted for 7 days and 7 nights, the likes of which had never been seen, with food enough for gods and paupers, music that called trees to dance, wine enough to fill an ocean, and luck enough for all to chance. The prince and princess lived happily ever after, and so may we. There we are. The end. I really like that book. tells the story of the bear and the princess. Very similar to another story you might know of Beauty and the Beast, in which the Beast keeps Beauty captive for a short time in his castle, and then they learn to love each other. As always, a really good thing with this story and with all of us would be to organise the story into first, then, next, after that, finally, using those time words to correctly sequence the story. And this tells the story of a bear and a princess. Could you have a different animal in the story? Maybe it's the princess and the white wolf. What would your story be about? Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.